Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Today is March 29th. It's 28th? No. 2019. We present for the second day of the Acupuncture Board meeting. The meeting is to take place in Department of Consumer Affairs, Hearing Room, Suite 186, 1747 North Market Boulevard, Sacramento, California, 95834. This meeting will be webcast. The time is now 9:09. Christine, please take a roll call to establish a quorum.
Dr. Matecki?
Present?
Chan?
Here.
Chimino?
Present.
Harabedian?
Here.
Kim?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
Osario?
Present.
Thank you, Christine. So we had yesterday introduced our new board members, and I just want to take a few minutes, want all our new board members to self-introduce themselves. Let's start it over here. Bradley Chimino, which is a governor appointee, please.
Thank you, Amy. My name is Bradley Chimino, and I am a business owner, a practitioner here in Sacramento. Very honored to be here. I do appreciate the experience. I really look forward to being a part of the board, doing my best to support and be fair and to do our best to serve the public. And I just can't thank you all enough for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. And, Shudong, sorry. Shudong. Okay, Shudong Lee actually is Assembly Speaker appointee, please.
Okay. Thank you, President Amy. My name is Shudong Lee. I'm a Taiji and Qigong teacher for many years. I'm very happy to serve as Acupuncture Board, and I may work my best with our board member and to serve our public. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And please, Francisco Kim.
Hi, my name is Francisco Han Kim. I've been a practitioner for a little over 20 years. And then I've been serving some of the Korean community association or taught some in different schools. So I have, I can use my knowledge and experience to coordinate this acupuncture board business in the future. I hope you can also participate and make better professional board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to make a little announcement. Yesterday, we have moved some of the agenda items around. Some of them moved to yesterday to accommodate the board members' availability. And also, I just want to say Thursday, there's a item 12 and 13 for the EO evaluation. We're going to move to the end of today. So you will see there's a little bit of change with the item moving around. And also, if I may, should we just move the calendar item for today? Actually, is on the item agenda 16. So let's do the calendar, if that's okay, because the calendar was from last year. So now we have a new board member, so I would like to get this. And in the back of your board menu here, there is a calendar there. At the end. Yeah, so
That's
would
right.
you?
Certainly.
Please.
Sorry, I knew I saw it at some point.
Thank you, Dr. Matecki.
As Dr. Mateke said, we have new board members, and we would like to recalendar to make sure we can accommodate all our members' schedules. I would recommend a 2-month break so that we can get a bit of work done before the next meeting. And just to go over our old schedule, it was middle of May for the next meeting, middle of August, and early November. So I would recommend middle of June, and we can continue with a middle of August and a November timeline as well. May I recommend that we start with June 13th and 14th? Are members available on that weekend, or those days?
What location?
Previously, we had discussed, the next location would have been Los Angeles, and then the Bay Area, and then San Diego. But we can change those locations as well. Those are the cities that we normally target when we do our outside meetings. Let's see if we can do dates first, and after the date is okay, we can determine the location. Are members okay with the 13th and 14th?
Works for me.
Yes,
Yep.
yeah.
Are members okay with Los Angeles for June 13th and 14th? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I would recommend then the middle to later mid of August in case there's any last-minute bill changes before it goes, before they're voted on. Would members be available the 15th and 16th of August? Right now, we have it scheduled for Bay Area. Good with you? You okay?
That's in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, that one's scheduled for Bay Area if members are okay with that. All right, 15th and 16th of August. And then we have the last meeting of the quarterlies, which would be November 7th or 8th. This is possibly in San Diego. Or we can also look at 14th and 15th. Thanksgiving would be the following week, so we'd be meeting before Thanksgiving. 17th, 18th, I'm sorry? 7th and 8th? How are people on 7th and 8th?
When's election day?
Oh, election
is
day
the
would be a
5th.
Tuesday, 5th,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, 7th and,
7th and 8th. Should we do 14th, 15th then, John?
I think either's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your question?
No, I mean, it's 14th.
14th? Would you say 7th and 8th?
Sounds good.
Okay, so 7th and 8th then?
Yeah, 7th, 8th.
Okay,
Okay. 7th, 8th,
It's fine with me.
okay,
all right.
okay.
That is the time when there's this COM meeting, so that might be something to consider for your schedule.
Thank you, Jay.
I was wondering.
Right.
Oh.
We should definitely have it that day.
So then, might I ask the board if we can do it on the 14th and 15th instead?
So let's see, generally, that's the day always for you guys to meet, the November?
It just already set,
Oh, they change, okay, so,
but you already know that it's happening.
okay, okay.
And we have appreciated participating in those events, so thank you. All right, members.
14th and 15th?
14th and 15th then?
Okay.
And that would be what, back here in Sacramento or
That one's
San
planned for San
Diego.
Diego.
San Diego?
Yeah.
Okay.
Christine, did you have a
So
comment?
Bradley,
Okay.
Brad is okay? 14?
Okay. All right, we have consensus. I don't believe we need a motion on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you want to just mention something about an agenda?
Sure,
item
we can take it
agenda?
to public comment and then
Yeah,
let me.
let's do that, okay. Thank you, Ben. So let's move to the agenda, item 3. The board now will hear public comment for items not on the agenda.
Good morning.
Morning.
Jacques Mormarco, Empress College. So I just wanted to bring up a very important area for public concern, and of course the board looks after public safety and transparency. And the handout that I just given is rules and regulations from the Colorado Acupuncture Board. And the very interesting thing about that regulation is the disclosure for the title doctor. And as Jay had brought up yesterday, there's so many different titles for doctors in this field. There's the old OMD, there's the OMD from Nevada, there's the DOM from New Mexico, there's the AP from Florida. It's a really bloody mess. It's just total confusion for the consumer. They have no idea who are the doctors, who have done the postgraduate degree, who have done the terminal degree, the DAOM, which is 1,200 hours. Now there is even a online, 100% online 2-quarter degree, and they have the title doctor. Of course, you do not regulate those titles. However, as you can see in the Colorado rules and regs on page 3 out of the 14, they do have a mandatory disclosure where the patients are informed on the education. That's page 3 out of the 14 pages. And in this, it says, list the education, the experience, and the degree, and the amount of hours that are given. So I think very important for the consumer to know that. And it's come up time and time over again. And back in the days, there were just a couple of different degrees. Now there's multitude of degrees. Everybody's calling each other one way or another, some type of doctor. It has the word Oriental, it has the word Chinese, now it even has integrative, or it has physician. And we know that even here in California, some individuals are using the title Doctor of Acupuncture with little parentheses, Rhode Island. It's just an award from the states, not even a title that they can use legally. So I think it's a very big confusion. I would like you to look at this and possibly consider this for an agenda item in the future to clear up this mess, in that the consumer will know what is the educational background. And some of these wonderful doctors from China don't even have the title doctor because it's a bachelor's of medicine, and they are more qualified to call themselves doctors. So people really need to disclose their background and education. I think it's going to solve a lot of confusion for the public and increase public awareness and public safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No? So, yes.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Amy. We're going to also use this opportunity to recap the items that were moved from today's agenda item to yesterday and what we covered, and then ask for any public comment on those items for anybody that may have been watching the webcast yesterday. So the first item we moved was the executive officer's report, including the staff update, the budget update, and the outreach update. Were there any public comments on that? Seeing none. The next item we covered was the regulation update, showing our schedule of the rulemaking packages we have planned for this year. Any public comment on that? That was item 7. The next item we reported on yesterday, that was initially for today, was item 9, the education report. Any public comments on that? Seeing none. We then covered the 3 packages for AB 2138. That was items 12, 13, and 14. Any public comment on the options that the board discussed? Seeing none. We then moved on to discuss the disciplinary guidelines and the uniform standards and review the changes from the board's recommended changes. And any public comment? No, okay. So that is it. We also, as Amy said, are moving the closed session to the end of today. And, we had the education committee meeting yesterday, as planned, so. Okay, we're good.
Thank you, Ben. So let's move to agenda item 4, report from Education Committee Chair from yesterday's committee meeting. John,
Thanks.
please.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll briefly just summarize what occurred. Francisco and I met, and we are the two members on the Education Committee. We were contemplating revised language in the regs for 1399.489 and 1399.483 for the continuing education requirements, specifically as they apply to the ethics requirement. And the two changes that we discussed and we approved were to make sure that any law and ethics requirement that is taken during the continuing education process does have a self-assessment aspect to it. So after you actually take the course, there's some sort of test to make sure that the taker of the exam retain that knowledge. And secondly, we also approved language that will be considered by the full board that just confirmed that for every 2-year period, a licensee will be required as part of their continuing education to take a minimum of 4 hours in law and ethics. This requirement will be waived if the licensee is renewing an initial license that has been issued for less than 2 years, and it will be waived if that licensee is actually renewing on inactive status. So if they remain inactive, then they won't have to require that. We had a nice discussion about maybe as a full board further defining what the law and ethics requirement will entail, and maybe working with the providers of continuing education courses to be more specific and clear with our help as to what those courses will be. Francisco?
Thank you.
Public comment?
Public comment?
Oh, he's just reporting, so can we discuss it?
Well, yeah, you can discuss because it says
Possible
possible
discussion,
action
okay.
on any recommendations.
So then the recommendation yesterday was to approve that language
It was.
to go before the full board. Does the board want to discuss that language, review that language? Or we can move it to be an item at the next board meeting?
Right. I think, yeah.
Yeah. that's-
I think that would be appropriate. If we could, put it on the item, as an item for the next full board meeting.
Okay.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. So now open to the public. Any comments? Seeing none? Okay. So now we look at agenda item number 6, legislative update. Christine Brother, of a policy coordinator, please.
Good morning. I just want to point out that this is a memo on all of the current bills that we're tracking that were introduced during the 2019-20 legislative session. If you look behind the memo, you'll see each of the bills, the full text, the legislative digest, and the analysis of each. This is early in the legislative session, so all the bills that you're seeing are in their early versions, just to emphasize that. Bills with a fiscal impact must be passed out of a policy committee by July 10th, and bills without a fiscal impact must be passed out of a policy committee by July 12th. Any fiscal bills must be passed out of fiscal committees by August 30th, and the last day for the legislature to pass bills is September 13th, and the governor has until October 13th to sign or veto bills passed by the legislature. Let me also point out, again, that these are early versions, so bills that currently include the board may be amended to exclude the board and may be amended further in the future. Likewise, bills that currently do not affect the board may be amended to include the board at a later date. Therefore, we will be tracking all of the bills affecting the board and provide the board members opportunity to update your positions if you so choose. You don't have to take a position on any of the bills that are presented today, but if you choose to, these are the positions that that you can take. There's support, and that would be that you fully support the board in its current form. Support if amended, you conditionally support the bill, but you feel that there may be amendments necessary for it to become law. And then there's oppose. You oppose the bill and feel it should not become law. Oppose unless amended. You conditionally oppose the bill and feel amendments are necessary to remove your opposition of it becoming law. Then there's watch or neutral, which is basically a no position, just kind of watching what the bill, does throughout the calendar year. And then there's no position. You just don't declare a position at all. If the board chooses to take a position, we do have motion language here that you could read from. And then once a position is taken, other than watch or no position, we communicate that to the legislature, whether it's support or opposition. So I'll go ahead and get into each bill. The first bill is Assembly Bill 193, introduced by Patterson. It was introduced January 10th, and it's been re-referred to the Committee on Business and Professions on March 6th with some amendments. And this bill has been active. I've been seeing different amendments and things. So I think this reflects the amendments as of, March 18th. The bill would require DCA at the beginning of January 1, 2021, to conduct a comprehensive review of all licensing requirements for each profession regulated by a board within the department and identify unnecessary licensing requirements as specified. The bill would also, the bill would also require the department to report to the legislature on January 1, 2023, and every 2 years thereafter on the department's progress. The department to issue a final report to the legislature no later than January 1, 2023. The bill would require that. The bill would also require the department to identify the professions reviewed, each unnecessary licensing requirement, and the department's recommendations to the legislature on whether to keep, modify, or eliminate the unnecessary licensing requirement in biennial reports. The bill would also require the department to apply for federal funds that have been made available specifically for the purpose of reviewing, updating, and eliminating overly burdensome licensing requirements as specified. At this time, we are recommending an oppose unless amended. This bill is similar to a Senate Bill 247 that failed in Policy Committee in 2017. The intent of Senate Bill 247 was to remove artificial barriers for lower income occupations. AB 193 is similarly proposing to remove unnecessary licensing requirements for all boards and bureaus under the department, specifically for barbers, cosmetologists, and custom upholsterers. As the bill is currently written, resources for the department to conduct a review of all programs would be required. It is estimated that funding for such resources would affect the board through a significant but unknown increase to its pro rata fees. Therefore, in its current version, the bill would have a significant but unknown fiscal impact on the board. So,
Would the board like to discuss this, or would someone like to make a motion to support, amend, oppose?
I have a question.
Please.
Beyond the resource allocation issue, the substance of this bill, what's staff's view on it? The comprehensive review that the department would be taking, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Let's say that there was just, enough resources to pay for it.
I would say that at this point, it looks like it's targeting more of the professions that are not the healing arts, but again, it touches on every board. So we don't, we feel that there's no unnecessary licensing requirements probably at this time, so I don't know what your guys' position is on that.
There was a Little Hoover study on barriers to licensure done, I believe, 2 years ago, and I think we have looked at ours specifically, and we may be in a good position. We don't know where the other boards and bureaus stand on that.
Okay.
There has been a move to reduce regulation of licenses as well, so in government in the last few years as well.
Do we plan to take public comment on each bill before we make a motion, or what was the?
It might be helpful just to provide comments to the board from the public if there's
Okay.
something that might inform us. You,
Go ahead. That's fine.
good to
So,
call, public comment?
Yeah. Let's open to the public. Any comments from the public?
The board could take just a watch position, see how it develops.
I'm fine with the recommendation. I mean,
Okay with the
Yeah,
look,
me too.
I think that our licensing requirements from my experience are, I don't see any unnecessary things that we're doing, but, yeah. So I'll motion that the Acupuncture Board take a oppose unless amended position on Assembly Bill 193, and direct the executive officer to inform the legislature and the author's office of this position, subject to council's, any comments? Okay.
Yeah, so I do have a comment. So if there's going to be an oppose unless amended position, and there's going to be a letter sent to describe that position to the author's office, normally there would be some guidance to the executive
what the
officer as to what the amendments that the board would like to see. And if there is none, then it would just be an oppose, yeah. So
Which is a great point, is our recommendation that we oppose unless amended, which would the amendment be that the Acupuncture Board is exempted from this requirement, or what
don't
is
know.
staff's view of the amendment?
Indeed, it's more to see if we do not need to be part of the increase in the pro rata fees, if this doesn't affect us, if we're streamlined, but an opposed position is clearer, ultimately. We're just saying, don't count us if we're being amended.
Yeah.
So,
I'd probably do the oppose unless amended, as the staff recommended.
Yeah, I'll take that as a friendly amendment to my motion. So it's just, I'm switching my motion to an oppose.
to an oppose, plain oppose. Board member, do we have a second on that?
I second.
Ruben?
Ruben? Okay, public comment? Seeing none? Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Mateki?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chimino?
Yes.
Harabedian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes?
Losario?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 7-0 to take an opposed position on AB 193.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to Assembly Bill 613. This has been introduced by Lowe, and it was introduced February 14th. This bill would authorize each board within the department to increase every 4 years any fee authorized to be imposed by that board by an amount not to exceed the increase in the California Consumer Price Index for the preceding 4 years, subject to specified conditions. The bill would also require the director of the department to approve any fee increase proposed by a board. The staff is recommending just a watch position. The purpose of this bill is to mitigate the process boards undergo when changing fees through legislation or through the Administrative Procedure Act. This bill will authorize boards to make fee adjustments every 4 years if necessary. In its current version, the impact of this bill would be minor and absorbable within existing resources. So any motion?
Any comments or questions from the board?
I think I take the watch positions as the staff recommended.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess my only question is, why wouldn't this necessarily be good for us? I mean, is there something that staff sees as being a negative as to why we wouldn't just support it?
It would be a good thing because you can do it well, the idea is that you can do it without going through the
Right.
regulatory process.
Exactly.
But there's concerns that as it's written, that it may not align with, or, what's actually authorized in law and regulate, like, can we do this actually? Is it legal? And other than that, I mean, we don't really have, like I said, it's minor and absorbable, could be a good thing.
Where are the other health providing boards on this? Do we know?
We don't know at the moment.
Okay.
Christine, have you heard
No,
anything?
I don't know.
A watch is probably safe.
And it may change, and it would be a new process, obviously. It wouldn't hurt the board. It may give us the authority to raise our fees, but right now we're also in that fee researching phase as well. So we're not quite sure how the process will lay out. We're expecting perhaps more to be written on this one. Do we need to make a motion for watch positions?
I would recommend it.
Yep. Amy, was that a motion from you?
Sure, I can move. Let me see, how do I see this bill now? So I move, that's for the last one, right?
That's the general one. You can just
Okay.
fill in
So I move the board to take the position on the bill 613 and direct the executive officer to inform the legislature and the authors.
We won't have to inform them if we're just watching.
Oh, okay, we just watch.
Take
Okay, take the watch position?
Uh-huh.
Okay. To the bill, AB 613.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Kipman Chan seconds. Public comment? Seeing none, let's take a roll call vote.
Dr. Mateki,
Yes.
Chan,
Yes.
Chimino,
Yes.
Harabedian,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Osario.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 to take a watch position on AB 613.
Thank you.
Assembly Bill 778, also introduced by Lowe. It was introduced February 19th. This bill would require the board to establish by regulation a procedure for identifying acceptable providers of continuing education courses. This bill would also require all providers of continuing education to comply with the procedures established by the board, and it would authorize the board to revoke or deny the right of a provider to offer continuing education coursework for failure to comply with specified provisions of law. At this time, we are recommending a support position. This is an early version of this bill, which is likely to change. It's intended to strengthen the board's enforcement over approved continuing education courses and CE providers. The board already does have procedures in place for CE providers to comply with the regulation. However, this bill would authorize the board to promulgate additional procedures through regulation. Currently, the board has authority to issue citation and fines for any noncompliance with CE regulations. This bill would allow the board to revoke or deny the right of a provider to offer CE coursework for noncompliance. This bill would increase public protection by expanding the board's authority over CE providers. In its current version, the fiscal impact of this bill may be significant as it may require additional investigation, which could result in unknown enforcement-related costs to meet a higher burden of proof. As a result, more enforcement workload will be required to process CE provider noncompliances through a disciplinary process if denied or revoked through the Administrative Procedure Act. We don't know if that's the intention of, adding that we have denial and revocation rights. We're just imagining if it were to act similarly like it does with licensees and applicants, we do have to go through the APA and you have to meet that higher burden of proof. Again, we don't know if that's the case.
Ultimately, this is working with us. It'll also allow, this is also creating a vehicle for further work on CEs and CE providers. So we're very curious to see where this goes, and it looks like right now it doesn't limit our authority and may expand our authority. So although there would be an increased workload, this is an item that has been addressed by a number of associations as well to improve our auditing of the providers. So I'm hopeful that this is going to be a good bill.
I just have one clarification. The summary here is correct, that it requires the board to establish, requires all providers. That language is correct, and then it says it authorizes the board to revoke. That's all correct language as to what it requires versus what it authorizes. But I do want to note that on the comments portion, it says, at the end of that first paragraph, it says, however, this bill authorizes the board. I just want to note that it requires, as opposed to authorizes. And that second paragraph there that says this bill would allow the board to revoke, that is correct. It authorizes the board to revoke, it doesn't require. So just with those clarifications as to what it's authorizing the board to do versus what it's requiring the board to do.
Thank you. So it does require the board to actively work on these items.
Can I just ask a question then about the way things currently work? Because this is interesting, because I just assumed this was already happening. So do CE providers not already apply to us for approval?
They do. These items addressed are in place. It does open it up so that we can have perhaps statutory change for greater authority later, and then for us to do regs behind those.
Okay.
So we do approve, deny providers. We do have a procedure for identifying acceptable providers, and we have procedures for continuing education compliance.
Okay.
And also, I just want to give the new board members a little bit of information on the continuing education. When we presented for the sunset review, has been a big issue. So this is one of the agenda, we needed to work on it. So this bill will strengthen the board, help, revoke unqualified providers for CE providers.
Yeah, I had a question. How the board to evaluate the continuing education providers' course? Who's going to evaluate the course material? And they provide it to the acupuncture, either school or for the continuing education for the licensee. So they submit the material to what body to evaluate. That's appropriate for those continuing education course. So do the board have some kind of authority, or somebody had something to look at the material?
So we do try to audit CE providers. That normally happens while we are auditing licensees, where we can see evidence of courses not approved or misadvertised or improper certification writing on the certificates itself. So there is some of that, but we don't have an active process as we're trying to do as we are doing an active process with our licensees. We do try to also screen courses, especially the distance education courses and the live stream courses. Those are a little easier than having to travel all over the state or the country. And we even approve courses outside of this country, as long as they meet our requirements. So it is there, the review, but it's not an active review. We only have one person working on continuing education, and that is already a full-time job working on the approvals for the courses as well as the licensee audits. But one thing to note is that we would also have the authority to deny providers, and this, which we can kind of, if there's any infractions or citations, but it's not explicit in our laws. And moreover, this might open it up so that we can impose late fees, so providers need to be able to stay on top of being approved, so that their courses stay approved, so that they're not submitting courses after their expiration date, which they're going to be denied because that's part of our check, but they might be submitting them thinking they're approved and starting to advertise, because there's nothing stopping them from advertising that a course is pending approval. Right? All they have to do is submit the application, and even then, that might not be necessary because it's pending approval. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board?
I would support this bill.
Would you like to make a motion?
Want to just throw out there is to keep in mind with regards to support versus amended, is that, as Christine noted, the bills change over time. So if you take a support position and it is amended and you haven't seen it, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christine, is that the board would maintain that support position even though they haven't necessarily have seen the amended version. So just with that caution when taking support
Right.
versus amended. But if you, for whatever reason, think that you want to take a support position because you know where the bill is going, or you're in alliance with the author's office or something, collaborating with the author's office, I don't know, maybe a support position is appropriate, but I do want to point that out.
Can we take, can a motion be made to take a support position on the bill as presented today?
I think that would be,
Yeah.
the support, or support.
Because if it's
I guess
amended,
you don't have I guess you don't have a support unless amended position.
Well, we,
unless amended,
yeah, support if it's amended.
Yeah.
But that means that, yeah, you don't, you only conditionally support it unless it gets amended. So I don't know if that's how they're feeling at this
I
point.
would do
Yeah.
support.
I suppose you could just clarify, if you're sending the letter, that you support it in its current
In its
state.
current state,
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe with that guidance, because I don't, I guess, see a position here, option for support unless it's amended.
and we
That would
can,
be virtually what you would be doing, I
Right.
suppose.
and we look forward to working with the author on this.
Yeah, I remember from the board training, they said there's no support unless amended, because they just take it as a support anyway.
Right.
Okay. I'll have to
So
look
it
into-
it might be better to just say today's version of the bill.
Yeah.
To make the motion, Francisco?
Yeah, let me see, John.
Ah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll move, take it to the motion.
And your motion is to support the
Support.
bill as it is currently written,
Yeah, that's it.
and direct the executive officer to communicate this to the legislature? Do we have a second?
Yes. 1 second.
Kipman Chan seconds. Do we have public comment?
Good morning. Neil Miller, CalAtma, California Acupuncture Traditional Medical Association. We are in support of the bill. We think it's a good vehicle to give the board a little bit more teeth. We'd also like to work with the author, as we talked about yesterday, streamlining the process so that you don't have to apply every single time for the same class within a 2-year period. So we hope to talk to the author about that. It's something that would hold down the budget for the board and not have to continually do this and to look at those numbers and see how it pulls out. But we think that it's a good bill for the consumer, the practice, the profession, and to the board. So we stand in support.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, let's move to a roll call vote.
Dr. Mateki,
Yes.
Chan,
Yes.
Chimino,
Yes.
Arabedian,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Osorio.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to support Assembly Bill 778.
As it is currently written.
Oh. Okay. So this is another bill introduced by Lowe, Assembly Bill 779, which was introduced February 19th. This bill would require a licensee who opens a new place of practice to register the new place of practice with the board in the same manner as described for a change in the location of a licensee's place of practice. It would also authorize the board to deny the renewal of licensure if a licensee fails to register the location of the new place of practice, and it would make other non-substantive changes. And this is affecting Business and Professions Code Section 4961 in our act. We're also recommending a support position. Again, this is an early version of this bill that will likely change another vehicle bill. It's intended to clarify current law as it relates to not only the registration of a change of location of an existing place of practice, but also require registration when a licensee opens a new place of practice without a change to their existing place of practice. Such a clarification in the law was lacking previously. This bill would provide more clarity to the licensee, which would increase licensees' compliance with registering all practice locations, whether it be new or a change. In its current version, the impact of this bill would be minor and absorbable within existing resources.
Any questions or comments from the board? I would point out that this would allow the board to more easily track licensees' places of practice, although they have to register with us. It would also, it would create a better tracking system to also provide a specific location's wall license. Right now, our wall licenses have no addresses on them. There's no license number or release number on them. And so it may easily be ported to another location, used in illicit practices or businesses. And so this would allow the board to have greater authority over the enforcement of those practice locations.
So I totally supported this bill, but I do want to see the situation like, for example, currently, with the palliative care, hospice care, the providers actually go do home visit, for physicians also, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, as our licensees, acupuncturists, may get called. I know hospital and hospice care right now for pain management.
Mhm.
So a lot, they would like to open up to, our licensees for that. So is there any way how they are aligned with like a mobile type of the practice? How this would work? They hang that in their car? Or something, so I'm just kind of like, how this going to
Right.
address, If it's a stable location, that's perfectly, I totally support this. But I'm just want to see if those providers go to the home visit,
Yeah.
which is really good for the public, for the patients.
So currently, our laws and regs already address this and allow for this. So within that section 4961, it does state, like, if you don't have a permanent place of practice, you just have to notify the board of that. And then also, there's a regulation for out-of-office treatments. I can't recall the exact regulation number, but it basically states that you have to follow the same standards of treatment, and that you have to just bring sterile needles and equipment, I think in an airtight container. So it does not specifically say that, licensees are exempted if they don't have a place of practice, but it's sort of inferred, I guess, that these requirements for hanging a wall license only apply to if you have a place of practice.
And also like other board, because for a physician, the home visit is really encouraged, especially for seniors, right? So since the 1990s, I know physicians started, really implemented for home visit because it cut the cost down, for the hospital discharged to home, and then you arrange the home visit. So I'm just to see if other board have any.
Yeah, so chiropractic board also has satellite licenses for office locations, and they issue those out to their practitioners. The acupuncture license itself allows for home visits. This really comes into play between the board tracking and also the municipality or the region, county, being able to see that there is a wall license specifically for that business at that location. So it's really coming now with the business process. So it just kind of perhaps would be more formal with the cities or the county, where that person is trying to have a physical location, a physical office, and they have a legitimate license for the traffic coming into their office.
Well, I do want to add, from being on the enforcement side, there was a good chunk of complaints that we would receive, and you could always have that added violation that they didn't register their place of practice, and whether there was a change. And so it's something that isn't being done. And again, if they're not registering it, then they may not be obtaining the wall license to display there. So it is kind of an issue, yeah.
How does it relate to the current pocket license that providers are required to carry with them in relation to Amy's interests in doing home visits and traveling care?
It doesn't relate to that. It doesn't talk about the actual pocket license. And I'm not aware of something within our act where it states that you have to explicitly carry that around. That may be in the general business and professions sections. I'm not sure. But I think that is the purpose of it, the pocket license. And that is what has the expiration date on it, because when you get your wall license, it doesn't have that date on there. So, yeah, I would assume you'd want to, carry that around for a home visit.
Yeah, that would be necessary for the home visit. It does give you license to do that. But it wouldn't be related to place of practice. Now, there's licensees must provide a mailing address, and that's a public address to the board. So the public can see that. It's on our license lookup, and it's for official correspondence with the board. And any additional places of practice would be listed as well.
Yeah, I totally support.
Any further comments from the board? Questions? Is there a motion on the table?
We need to open for public.
After a motion.
Oh, okay.
Bradley?
Motion?
Yeah?
You want to move?
Do you want to do the motion? Top of, first paragraph of the 779.
Regarding Assembly Bill 779, I support this bill.
Oh, you don't want a motion?
Motion?
I motion that the board support.
I motion that the board support this bill 779.
I'm second.
Thank you, Shudong.
So there's a recommended motion language on page 2 of the staff memo. So that would be under your tab number 6 of your materials. There's a memo from Christine. And on page 2 of that memo, at the very top of the page, there's recommended motion language. So you would just fill in essentially the position, the bill number, if you want to take a position. So for example, this motion might look like, I motion that the Acupuncture Board take a support position on bill number, I believe this one is it Assembly Bill?
Yeah.
779. And the part that I think was missing was, and direct the executive officer to inform the legislature and the author's office of this position. So,
State that then?
no.
So
But
moved.
if you, do you
Practice.
approve of that amendment to
Do
the
you approve?
motion?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay. And Shudong, so the second, do you approve the amendment to that?
Yes.
Okay. Any public comment?
Neil Miller, CalAtmo, we are in support of the bill. We think that it would give the Acupuncture Board a little bit more authority and perhaps restrict some of the unregistered use and unethical use of people using someone else's license, and to hold down some of the ethical violations and send a message out that you can't do that. As far as the pocket license go, it's been my understanding, when I teach classes, I always tell patients, practitioners, that they must carry that. So if it's not spelled out, perhaps you could put an amendment in there, or a recommendation to Mr. Lowe, to reflect that, to show that the home visits and hospice care and so on and so forth, so that it would be a requirement. It's not a burden on the profession, so we would support such an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this item?
Jack Marmarco, Empress College. I support Mr. Miller's opinion on that. However, I do think that it does say required to carry the license, so I have it here, not on the actual license, but when you do the cutout, it does say you're required to have this on you at all times. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, let's move to a roll call vote.
Dr. Mateki,
Yes.
Chan,
Yes.
Chimino,
Yes.
Arabedian,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Osorio.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 in support of AB 779.
Thank you.
Okay. So on to another low bill, Assembly Bill 1245. This was first introduced February 21st, 2019. The bill would provide greater restrictions on unlicensed individuals advertising acupuncture services if using the listed terms in relation to acupuncture or the newly added terms traditional and complementary along with acupuncture and is associated with an Asian subgroup. These are some amendments to Business and Professions Code Section 4935 within the Act. This is also an early version of this bill and could change. It's likely to change. This bill provides more clarity and also expands the definition of unlawful practice of acupuncture by adding traditional medicine to the list of keywords that a person without a current and valid license to practice acupuncture is prohibited from advertising. Adding traditional and complementary medicine also aligns with the terminology used by ICD-11, International Classification of Diseases. In its current version, the impact of this bill would be minor and unabsorbable within existing resources. Therefore, staff does recommend a support position.
So this is a preventative measure so that folks do not advertise acupuncture with any other traditional medicine. Any questions or comments from the board?
I was serving as a steering committee member at the CalATMA, which is a California Acupuncture Association of Traditional Medicine, because we chose that as is defined in WHO. So it is, we regarded at the time acupuncture considered as one of the traditional medicine. So it's a correct. It's the right thing to do to put a restriction on use traditional medicine as if they are, unless they are licensed.
And this is when used in conjunction with acupuncture.
Also, I think the advertising, just from early, mentioned, it is confusing with all those titles. So this is a good step, to start to set the differences for you licensees, how you use the names, traditional, complementary. I think it's a very good step. I totally support on that.
Any other comments from the board members? Questions? Is there a motion on the table?
I motion the acupuncture board support position on
Microphone?
bill.
Can you say that again, please?
I motion the American Acupuncture Board take support position on Assembly Bill 1245 and direct the executive officer to inform the legislature and the author of the office of this position.
And what we want to do in its current form again, to be specific with the support? Would you be open to that?
Yeah.
Yep. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Ruben. Public comment.
Neil Miller, Cal Atma. We are in support of this bill, and we have an idea for the board as an amendment. We would like to work with the board on this issue. You're aware of the issue of dry needling, and we've sent a message out to the public that dry needling is considered acupuncture in the state of California, and we sent a message to the physical therapists. But we have a new problem that is emerging, that is athletic trainers. Athletic trainers have begun to use the term dry needling. I forwarded some information to Ben recently. He hasn't had a chance to get into this, but there are 6 universities currently that are offering courses in dry needling for athletic trainers. Athletic trainers are not regulated by the state. They're simply certified. So we would like to entertain the idea of working with the board and Sung Low to perhaps address this issue and there's a new CPT code coming out next year, TPT dry needling, trigger point therapy, which is within our scope of practice. So this would give the board more authority and a clear understanding to any other person out there trying to do acupuncture, whether they're calling it dry needling or not, and this would put a stop to the athletic trainers. And then we could send out a letter to post-secondary BPE, is that what it is? For a cease and desist that they're doing activity that is considered acupuncture in the state, and that's regulated by the CAB. So we think that this is a great bill as it is, but we think that this would be, an amendment here would really help the acupuncture board stop the illegal use of dry needling as it's being, and set a message to everybody that acupuncture and dry needling are the same thing, and put a stop to these athletic trainers. I don't think that the universities are aware that they're putting on programs that are not legal. And I think that the board, this would streamline the process for the board to have some authority to stop this practice. So we stand in support, but we would like to work with the board, and I'll present perhaps at the next meeting, we could put it on the agenda for us to discuss this, but as I stated yesterday, our association really wants to work with the board and the legislature in partnership, working together to better protect the consumer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on this? Seeing none, let's take a roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mateki?
Yes.
Chan?
Yes.
Chimino?
Yes.
Harabedian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Osorio?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 for the board and support position on AB 1245 in its current form. The last bill that we're going to go over is Senate Bill 425, introduced by Hill. This affects Section 800 of the Business and Professions Code, which is in the general provisions. It was just introduced February 21st. And just for context, this section that it's affecting speaks to the central file that boards need to keep on licensees. This bill would delete the specification that the summary of a licensee's central file be comprehensive when provided to a licensee or a licensee's counsel when an information source is being protected. This bill would require any health facility or clinic, administrator or chief executive officer of a healthcare service plan or other entity that makes any arrangement under which a healing arts licensee is allowed to practice in or provide care for patients to report any allegation of sexual abuse or sexual misconduct made against a healing arts licensee to the relevant state licensing agency within 15 days of receiving the allegation, and would require the relevant agency to investigate the circumstances underlying the received report. The bill would require an employee or healing arts licensee who works in a health facility or clinic, healthcare service plan, or other entity with knowledge of any allegation of sexual abuse or sexual misconduct by a healing arts licensee to report to the relevant state agency having jurisdiction over the healing arts licensee and the administration of the health facility or clinic, healthcare service plan, or other entity within 15 days of knowing about the allegation of sexual abuse or sexual misconduct. This bill would make a willful failure to file the report by a health facility or clinic, healthcare service plan, or other entity punishable by a civil fine not to exceed $100,000 per violation, and any other failure to make that report punishable by a civil fine not to exceed $50,000 per violation as specified. This bill would also prohibit a person, including an employee or individual contracted or subcontracted to provide healthcare services, a health facility or clinic, a healthcare service plan, or other entity from incurring civil or criminal liability as a result of making a report. At this time, staff recommends a watch position. As of last fiscal year, in regards to sexual misconduct cases, we did make up approximately 5% of the board's total complaint volume. The amount of sexual misconduct cases would increase likely based on the changes of Senate Bill 425, but the exact increase in volume is unknown at this time. Additionally, if the board learns of any non-compliance with the reporting requirements, that would also increase our complaint volume. At this time, judging from the low volume of current sexual misconduct cases that we receive per year, its estimated volume should not increase to a level warranting additional enforcement staff. The fiscal impact of Senate Bill 425 is projected to be minor and absorbable within existing resources at this time. However, in the event actual workload is greater than projected, the board may be required to request additional resources through the annual process. I'll just add, it kind of acts similarly to how malpractice insurers and licensees have to report malpractice judgments or settlements over $3,000 to the board. It's like a mandated reporting, so this would now be a mandated reporting of allegations of sexual abuse or sexual misconduct related to a licensee and having to report that to the board within 15 days.
I think the board has authority to discipline the licensee if they were convicted or they violated this sexual misconduct crime. So,
That is correct. The board does have authority there if it
Yeah.
receives that complaint.
And considering the 5% of the board total complaints received is this sexual misconduct, and especially so it's declining, and also we are having 4 hours of ethics continuing education. So I think it's well recognized among the practitioners and licensees. But so maybe I would go watch a position because. It'll take another burden for the board, and also especially the nature of the sexual misconduct claim is sometimes takes time, and to verify and or to finalize the investigation. So yeah.
Thank you, Francisco.
So let me see, so why we not take, I'm just kind of like educate, why we not take a support position on this bill, so how the other board,
Yeah.
is it too early?
It's kind of too early. I don't know what other boards' positions are. It does promote consumer protection,
Oh.
so you may want to take a support position. I think at the time we were just saying watch in the fact that it may increase workload. It may require us to ask for additional resources. But we don't know. Because obviously we don't know if these things are even being reported to the board as is. This would make it to where it has to be reported, and we have to investigate it. But yes, it is good for consumer protection for sure. Yeah.
I support.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's just,
Other board member.
yeah, I think anything we can do to straighten our regulations, and this, I don't think it's anymore, requires any more staff or, right?
Yeah, that's the only,
Yeah,
like caveat of it, yeah.
I will support it.
We need more staff.
Any
Give
other
us a
questions or
reason.
comments?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Do we hear a motion on the table?
I just have a question. I mean, I've read through the bill a few times now, and I just can't, is there anything that says, and this is more for the clarification for the reporting entity, so the health facility, the, whoever the employer is of the practicing acupuncturist who would receive this, the allegation? Is the allegation just, does it have to be a criminal allegation, or is it just any sort of allegation that's made to, it's not specified here in the bill, so.
Yeah, it's not specified.
Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, if it's criminal, we should know about it anyways, because they're live scanned. So from, my reading of it, that it's any allegation.
Just any allegation,
Yeah.
okay.
I will point out the one thing that's a little unclear to us, how this would work, is it states that it's a civil penalty, and it's unclear if we would be imposing that action or if it would be through like the Attorney General's office. Like, we don't know who imposes the fine and takes in that actual fine amount. That part is sort of unclear to us.
Do you recall how it's done for the 801 malpractice reporting? Is that the healthcare services?
It's worded
or-
differently,
Oh.
yeah. It's not the same penalty.
What we could do is if we support as its current rate, so we could do vote on that.
Yeah.
So I would support, and I don't know how board members.
Yeah, can I just get some clarification? I thought I understood what cross-out versus italicized in the actual bill meant. So I thought italicized was
New
language, it was the new language that the bill would be introducing, but is that not right? Is everything within SB 425 actually new? Or is it just,
No, there's a section on page 9 of that bill, there's new language.
right, okay, my understanding is correct. So
Yeah.
it seems like the 15-day requirement from receiving the allegation is already part of the existing law. Right, because I'm viewing it on page 6 here of SB 425, page, under subsection B. So it doesn't seem like that's the actual change. The italicized change comes on page 9, which is, the board shall disclose a probationary physician's and surgeon certificate issued pursuant to this section and the operative statement of issues to an inquiring member of the public, and shall post the certificate and statement on the board's internet website for 10 years from issuance. So that seems to be the change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unless
that's
I'm just,
definitely one of the changes, yeah.
so to me, the 15, I think we're all in support of, if there's an allegation, it should be disclosed. That seems to be part of existing law already, though. So I'm just wondering what the point of the bill seems to be that the board shall disclose a probationary physician's and surgeon's certificate issued pursuant to the statement, and that's on page 9.
Yeah, that was one of the changes, and I didn't highlight that because it doesn't affect our board.
I guess I'm just not really sure what, at this point, what the bill's actually doing in terms of,
Right.
disclosure requirements and, but you're right, the preamble of the bill is saying all the things that is included in the report and the comments.
Right.
It is unclear. Or if it's just that change, then it's very specific.
Yeah, but the preamble of the bill does say, it's this 15-day requirement. I just don't know if that seems to already be existing law, so.
Yeah,
It's,
Yeah.
I'm trying to look this up. And this bill analysis that's attached here has on page 5 at the bottom.
Yep.
Says Section 805.8 is added to the
Oh, okay.
Business and Professions Code. I do agree with you, that's very unclear because it's not italicized.
Okay.
I didn't, thought that was new.
Trying to pull up the Business and Professions Code to see if there is an 805.8, but that seems to be what's happening. that
Got it.
The whole section would be brand new.
Okay.
Is that, Christine, your understanding?
Yeah, from when I looked at it, it looked like, and was in enforcement, I was not aware of any requirement like that. I have looked at the 800 series before. I don't recall there being that section or that
Yeah.
current requirement.
Legislation. So, tab 6. Very last bill. Before the tab.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it is.
This bill right
Sometimes it's more clear on the actual website, so I'm
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
and I think it was brand new, but I just want to look.
So,
Yes, it is brand new. It's all italicized in blue, 805.8.
yeah,
Got it.
currently the 805 series goes up to 805.7. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well. All right.
Maybe beneficial then to just watch what develops here.
I mean, I agree with the board member. I mean, I'm in support of it. I just didn't, I was more confused about what, yeah, so I'm happy to entertain whatever motion anyone wants to make, but.
Can we call Matt?
We need to make a motion?
Yeah.
Staff might have some input
Oh,
if we
okay.
can provide.
Oh, sure.
Matt Shamini with the Acupuncture Board. I just wanted to chime in here, is that as the bill is currently drafted, there are some questions that are unclear to us at this point. Part of that is the reporting requirements and the cross-jurisdictionality of it. Since we don't have jurisdiction over the facilities necessarily, we're not totally clear on how that would work. And so for those reasons and some of the other reasons, that's why we are in a watch position at this point.
Recommend.
Okay. Thank you.
But notwithstanding, we do support the public safety component of it.
And I want to add, I think the intent being that you're reporting it to the board that oversees the licensee involving the conduct or allegation, because that is the issue there. But Matt's correct, if the entity fails to do the reporting, we don't know, we don't have authority, we don't have jurisdiction over them. So that is unclear. How does that work? But the jurisdiction and the authority is already there over the licensee's allegation and the conduct itself being that we now have to investigate.
So we could do a watch position and then maybe bring back to the board as the bill is more clear, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully they'll
Yeah.
clear it up.
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion on the table? Do we want to take a watch position?
Yeah, I can make a motion. I move that the Acupuncture Board take a watch position on Senate Bill. It is Senate Bill 425. And I don't have to direct anything else since it's a watch position. But I do think, I don't know if this is part of the formal motion, to send a message that the board supports the spirit of what's trying to be done here. I mean, I think we're in favor of that. I think it's a watch as to the formal bill itself, but the spirit and the intent of the bill is well taken.
Note that.
Good.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Francisco Kim seconds. Public comment.
Neil Miller, and I'm simply representing myself on the opinions here. These are not the opinions of our association. But I personally support this bill. This is a huge problem, and we really need to get some teeth and send a message out there that this has to stop. It's been a huge problem for a long time, and I think sending a clear message to protect the consumer. But I have another comment. Whether or not the board has jurisdiction and authority over schools, because it's come to my attention, working in a lot of different schools, that there's been some inappropriate sexual misconduct at some of the schools, and students are afraid to speak out because they've invested all of this time and they have a professor or somebody who's running a school or something, and this is a big problem. So I want to bring it to your attention, and that might be something that you could discuss and put on the next agenda as you're watching this bill going forward, to maybe discuss possible amendments that would give you some authority or jurisdiction for this sort of problem with the schools and the profession. So I personally support this, but I hope that you'll not just watch it, but really look at it and see if there's anything that we could do to massage this bill a little bit to make it a little better and give you a little bit more authority and jurisdiction over the problem and to eliminate it. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, let's take a roll call vote.
Okay. Dr. Mateki?
Yes.
Chan?
Yes.
Chimino?
Yes.
Harabedian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes?
Osorio?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 of taking a watch position on Senate Bill 425. Can I get a clarification on if the motion also includes for us to inform the legislature that the board supports the spirit and intent of the bill? Was that included in the motion?
I think, no,
No, it wasn't.
I think that can be confusing as to whether you're taking a watch
or a support position.
I just think staff, my intent was for staff to talk with the author and basically
Okay.
be,
I just
you
want to
know.
make that
We will reach out to
clarification.
the author.
Okay, just reaching out to the author. So that is not part of the motion. Okay.
Thank you.
And it looks like that concludes all of the bills that we're looking at today.
Item D for legislative, I'll take that. This is in line with the board's strategic plan.
Legislation that's not on the agenda item?
That's correct.
Well, no, that would be during the.
Items not on the agenda.
But it's up to Dr. Mateki if she wants to open that item back up.
This is
So,
6.
so Dr. Mateki, the question I think that the public commenter is asking is if you would reopen up agenda item 3, but public comment on items not on the agenda, as the public comment is on an item that is not actually on agenda item 6.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So we're opening up agenda item 3,
Right.
public comment on items not on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assembly Bill 888, introduced by Assemblyman Lowe. I'm Neil Miller, representing Cal ATMA. Assembly Bill 888 requires physicians to inform both patients and minors or guardians of non-opioid options for treatment and pain, including but not limited to acupuncture, chiropractic, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and mental health. And we believe that this is a good bill. It includes acupuncture, and we'd like to see you work with us in supporting such a bill. So we're recommending that you put it on the next agenda. The first hearing will be on Tuesday next week, but I think that Assemblyman Lowe would probably love it if you took a support position. We think it's a good bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay.
No?
Shall we go back to?
Yeah,
Item
let's back to the item 6. Thank you.
Item 6B, Site Inspection Authority. This is a strategic plan item. We'll be looking, staff has been working on AB 2138 and the disciplinary guidelines, but we will be working on also finding language for Site Inspection Authority. As you may recall, the board does have a complaint-driven Site Inspection Authority, but not non-complaint-driven Site Inspection Authority. And we're looking to expand the scope of the board's authority there. We will bring you language at the next meeting, hopefully. No? No language? Okay. AB 434. If I could have Christine and I, and as well as our staff member Beck and Telasco, have been attending the sessions with the Department of Consumer Affairs on updating, coming into compliance with AB 434. This is to make our websites accessible and be ADA compliant, and there'll be some changes happening as the go-live date is this summer, July 1st. And so what we will be needing to do is take a look at how our materials are posted on our website so that they can be readable. And right now, the department is working with other state agencies to establish the standard, along with the Department of Justice. So we'll keep you posted. As you may know, some of our items went up, for materials went up a little late, and that's because we were screening our materials to look at how compliant they are. This, again, doesn't go into effect until July 1st. However, we are trying to get ahead of that now. So please bear with us if you see some delays in posting of materials. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Christine. So let's move to agenda.
Public comment on BRC.
Okay.
Any public comment on items B or C? Seeing none, we can move to the next item.
Thank you, Council. So let's move to agenda item 8, enforcement report, cricket bogus.
I would like to introduce the board's new enforcement coordinator, Cricket Borges. She's been working with us since 2014, so she is not new to our program. She is quite the expert. Good morning, Cricket.
Good morning. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
I've worked actually in enforcement with the state for 20 years, so
Yes.
he likes to think of me as an expert. Okay, so we are going to be looking at the Q2 of the 18-19 fiscal year, which began October 1st, 2018 through December 31st of 2018. So the first chart that we're going to look at shows the complaints and convictions and arrests. These are the total number of complaints received by category, and these are all during this quarter. The grand total of complaints that we received during this quarter, are 88. Then the number of closed cases or cases that were referred to investigation is 90. These numbers are not going to match because cases that we received in the prior quarter may actually be cases that fall within that closed or referred to investigation stage. Of the 23 criminal charges and convictions, 18 were received on applicants and 5 were received on licensees. Any questions about that?
I wondered, because is any way we can illustrate it is where, because of the numbers, you received 88 and now you close the 90 is confusing. So anywhere can do a little bit illustration, even like a star, so when we read the report, we know what it means. Otherwise, why you receive this 88 and then now you close as a 90?
We can work with that. We can see what we can do to make it a little more clear for you.
Thank you.
So they don't all come in terms of that. We can look at other options, but yeah, there can be more cases that close than come in a week. But we'll look at other formats to provide you.
confusing.
Okay, moving on to the next graph. This actually is a bar graph that shows the complaint volume from the Q2 of 18-19. This graph above shows the number of complaints received by the complaint type for this quarter. When each complaint is logged into the database, it is assigned a complaint type and based upon the primary violation. So you'll see here in the graph that the unlicensed, unregistered complaints, as well as the criminal charges / convictions, those are the highest volume of complaints that we're receiving. You'll also always see that unprofessional conduct is the second highest. The concern that I have on here is our sexual misconduct cases. They are going up a little bit more. We have seen an influx of those cases in the last 2 quarters, I think, and this only reflects the Q2. So you're going to see that number rise probably in the next report. On to the investigations. This includes formal investigations conducted by the Division of Investigation, as well as the desk investigations conducted by staff. You'll see the number in this quarter that were initiated per category, the number that are pending, which falls over from the previous quarters, and the number of the cases per category that we've actually closed. At the bottom of those columns, you'll see the totals. The average number of days to close these investigations that are in that third column averages 138 days. That's for both the DFI investigations as well as the desk investigations conducted by staff. The next graph shows the number of investigations closed out of each month of the quarter. The line illustrates the average number of days the case was open from receipt of complaint to the date the investigative phase was closed. After the investigation is closed, the case is either referred to disciplinary action, issued a citation, or closed due to insufficient evidence due to no violation. The time it takes during the discipline phase is not captured in these averages. The overall average process time for cases that resulted in disciplinary action this quarter is shown below. The disciplinary actions here, it only applies to cases that will result in formal discipline through a decision and order, and not all case closures. So you'll see where the decisions, you'll see that there's 0. Although that doesn't look very good, you'll see that we requested 2, but we have 18 cases that are pending there. So just for the revocations, voluntary surrender, probation, license denied, and public reprimand, we just haven't had any cases finalized in the disciplinary process within this quarter. That's why those numbers are 0. It also shows that because we haven't had any of those decisions finalized, the overall average process time does reflect 0 because we haven't closed them. We do have currently 19 citations that are pending and issued, and also we currently have 37 probation cases that are currently active. So when we move on to the next page, which is the trend analysis, the first paragraph talks about the complaint trends. This quarter's data is better understood when we use the last year's 17-18 fiscal year Q2 data as a point of reference. In comparing the same quarter from the last year to this year, the board can assess the performance and progression of the board's enforcement program. The complaint volume in this year's Q2 is comparable to last Q2. We received 79 complaints, and this year the board received 88. Since last year, the board has seen an increase in complaints received in Q2. The only notable changes in the types of complaints were received were found to be unlicensed, unregistered complaints, which increased from 4 to 23. However, unprofessional conduct complaints had a downturn from 20 to 13. The other complaint types only had slight differences from last year's Q2 to this year's quarter. The investigation trends are more favorable than the prior quarter, Q2, Q2 of fiscal fiscal year 17-18. Additionally, when we compare these 2 years, there were some less favorable trends as well. The total investigations pending at the close of quarter 2 this year is 3.5% lower than last year. The last year, there was 163 investigations pending, whereas this year, there's 157 investigations pending. The total investigations closed decreased from slightly by 17%, with 69 investigations closed last year to 57 investigations closed this year. However, the average time to close an investigation decreased by 20%, with last year's quarter 2 averaging 173 days, and this year's quarter 2 averaging 138 days. So we're trying to push these through a little bit faster. This is a continued reflection of staff being able to focus its attention on some of the aging cases that needed to be closed without discipline, closed with citations, or closed and transmitted to the Attorney General's Office for Discipline. If we move on to the formal discipline trends, it shows that this quarter had a 33% decrease in complaints referred to the Office of the Attorney General for discipline, going from 3 complaints referred last year's quarter 2 to 2 complaints referred to this year's quarter. However, there has been an increase in accusations and statement of issues filed this year, going from 0 filed last year to 4 filed this year. So enforcement staff, once it goes to the AG's office, we're waiting for the AG to review the case and prepare that disciplinary document for us. So that's why last year we saw none in this quarter, versus this year the AG's office actually had those prepared and forwarded to us for us to forward on it and serve. There's also an increase in the number of cases pending at the Attorney General's office. There were 11 cases pending last year, whereas this year there's 18 cases, which is a 63% increase. The increased pending cases is a direct result of a higher number of overall complaints referred to the Attorney General's office this year. The average overall process time for decisions is 100% decrease comparable to last year's. It's because we had zeros. With a 479-day from the complaint to the discipline to this year's 0 days because there weren't any pending cases closed during this quarter. The board is meeting its performance measures target within this area. Any questions?
Yeah, I had a question. On the unlicensed, this second quarter had 23 compared to last year's second quarter, it's only 4. It's jumped a lot. So is that the timing difference, or every second quarter the unlicensed complaining is higher?
It's going to be different. It's going to fluctuate.
Yeah, do this second quarter, this unlicensed complaining is a similar each case or different reason to complaining?
They're probably different reasons. They're all different. Every case comes in, and that's where we see what their statistics are for the types of cases that come in. We get a wide melting pot of cases, and so they're processed differently, but there isn't any one particular type of allegation that comes in per any specific quarter. Is that answering your question?
Well, but the question is, can the board can look at this complaining to separate that what kind of category they complain the most, so we can address on it? Because the second quarter you had 19 cases. Mm-hmm. I know the timing difference, but what this 19 cases come from? Do they complaining one thing or different things? Or
Could they be multiple allegations? Yeah. They absolutely could.
So there's no similarity for each case by each case. So you cannot have the address on those issues particularly.
I would think I would agree with that, because each allegation could come in with multiple categories. Absolutely. So no, we wouldn't be able to address just the one issue of that allegation. There could definitely be multiple.
So is that the board cannot address the issue for the particular complaining to, had those things happen, and we can address on it, because the complaint is from different corner, and you cannot saying, certain amount, certain complaining on this direction, we should address on it, and then we can reduce that.
We still can address on each category
Yeah.
that's filed, even though an allegation may come in with multiple violations. Like, for example, the ones that are unlicensed or unlicensed and unregistered practice, we can address that particular category, even though they may come in on multiple complaints with multiple allegations of maybe unprofessional conduct as well as unregistered. We certainly can address the actual allegation type. I'm not sure how we would do that, though. But I think there's probably a way that we could figure that out.
Yeah, because we had to do something, because always it's happen, and then we're going to do something. It's a little bit not proactive, okay? So if we can categorize those unlicensed complaining, then we can address, and then we can do something about it, reduce this complaint. Because, everything you happen, you just follow it. Everything happens, follow it. So you don't have a prevention on it.
Right, are you talking about maybe addressing it in like the outreach kind of direction? Like the categories of these particular complaints, to be proactive and get the information out there?
So I may.
Sure.
Yeah, I followed with Kim, and I have the same questions here. The unlicensed, the unregistered, complaints has been really going up, right? So, the board, as the members, we would like to know how we can help on that. It is true, if something we can go prevent, help, outreach, public education. So, but we need to know what is all this related, So maybe there's a breakdown, information, or maybe right now it's too early to give us those kind of subcategories. Maybe, staff would know better. So then board can work on it, maybe can help. This is a significant increase.
Can you specify or make a definition on how do you categorize the criminal, unlicensed or unregistered act, and also incompetence and negligence?
So unlicensed would just mean they haven't received their license? Does unregistered mean their address has not been registered with the board? Is that my understanding?
It can mean that as well, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what we can do is we can look at seeing if there's a finer way of breaking this down for the board members to look at, as well as any more. Currently, we're just comparing this quarter to the same quarter last year. So you're not going to see too much information with that, but we can take a look at more historical trends, perhaps provide you the last 8 quarters or something like that. I'll work with staff to see what we can provide. Also, this would be an opportunity for a partnership with the associations so that they can reach out to their membership. And I think that if we provide that information, that would help guide them in their efforts as well. Does that address any questions?
Can I ask a question? Are you guys interested in seeing the types of unlicensed cases and who they are on, and the actual subject matter of? Not obviously we can't.
No.
They're confidential, but is that what
Right.
you're interested in seeing?
I think it's more like a breakdown. You said, okay, licensed, right? So it's because someone don't have acupuncture license and then treat patients, So we just kind of have a little bit of breakdown so we know what it is, right?
Okay.
So I just am not sure.
Now, again, we cannot share information until the process is done. So the complaint process it's confidential for the most part until it comes to its termination and the investigation.
Well, and these categories specifically are broken down by the department's categories. So not sure how we could actually break it down further unless we do some manual counts.
Okay.
Exactly.
We'll take a look at how we can provide different reporting options for you. It may not be ready for June's meeting, but we'll be working actively on it.
Yeah, I think it's very good to know because we are requiring 4 hours of ethics continuing education, but we have to give them some guidance on what part of action must be addressed more important.
Certainly, and I just want to point out that the board didn't approve the language for CE ethics to move forward, only that it is now at the discussion level. So, but we are moving on that as well, so I understand.
I just want to add something, just Kim says that if we can break down this little bit more detail, so the continuing education or some another procedure we can pose to reduce this complaining, because, it's so broad and you cannot pinpoint on the issue. So just like we just waiting for happen and then we process, waiting for happen to process. So I think that if we can clean it down, that continuing education or some another board procedure to educate and protect the public as more efficiently until we find out and then we do the procedures a little bit too late.
The board also does post all of its disciplinary actions on its website. So the public is welcome to go in and read. We have all the names of the people in disciplinary situations and the paperwork on why they received the disciplinary action they did. I understand some people in the acupuncture community do read up on those and provide information on that. So that is available. We'll see if we can provide a more digestible format for the board to read. And again, that's after the discipline is completed. Now we can look at what we can present if we anonymize some things for the complaint volume in terms of categorization. But that we wouldn't be able to share specifics with you on.
In that same line, I still would like a little more clarity as to what an unlicensed or unregistered person is. Are we talking about a student that makes violation? Are we talking about just someone in the general public who's performing acupuncture
It could be both.
entirely illegally?
It could also be someone who's practicing with an expired license. They're considered unlicensed. So it could actually be all of those.
So I would certainly be for having a little more clarity as to defining where those avenues are in relation to how we can better support minimizing them.
I wanted to add that Cricket touched on it, that we're kind of hindered by the legacy database, and again, we're moving to a new IT system. So because you guys are expressing this, maybe this could be something for the functional requirements we could consider, that you're wanting to see more of a breakdown so we could categorize it more in detail, so that might be something we can note.
We'll look at what level of detail we can implement sooner rather than later, and then take that in mind when we're looking at our new system as well.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Thank you, Kriya.
Thank you.
Oh, yep. Public comment?
Neil Miller representing myself. I just wanted, as a person who's been coming here for almost 30 years, watching the board and seeing, I really want to compliment Ben and his staff. The points that Kitman have brought up are really good points in getting more and more details. But when I look at the report and I look at the graphs, these are things that the profession has been asking for a long time. A further breakdown would be very helpful. I'm one of those people who does read some of the complaints to find out some of the things that are going on. And I mentioned it yesterday that I was completely unaware that you needed to have a bell, buzzer, or an intercom for a patient to connect with you. And I've been talking to other acupuncturists in our association. None of them had a clue that that's it's negligent or unprofessional conduct. I'm not sure what category it fell in. But seeing the categories, the breakdown, you can kind of see that there's a trend. The board seems to be on top of processing things much better. The reputation of the board it's being felt within the profession that you're working with us, and I'm speaking as an individual here, but as a person who represents an organization, I know that we're really interested in getting more and more details and being on the proactive side of preventing this stuff. Great points that you made today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? One more?
My name is Yongping Chen. I represent myself. So I'd like to ask, do you ever do any research or comparison as acupuncture profession compare with other profession like MD, PT, chiropractor? Do we have more or less complaints? Any idea?
I have not done any research like that.
I think maybe so if we have the least complaint, that means our profession, our board monitor very well. So I just want reminder or mention that, suggest you consider that. And number two, if we have some, so like our board member mentioned the category, what kind of complaint is the most, what is the least. And so that can show board and profession, we are doing good job in some area, not need more improvement in some other area. So I think this is very necessary. And I participated acupuncture board meeting in the last couple of years. I remember I mentioned this a couple of times, and always as Los Angeles, the association chair, vice chair, I've been mentioning this issue, like the board can cooperate with association, more education. So I'm very glad to see the board is going to implement the ethics requirement for CE, and we will cooperate and do whatever we can, make this professional better, safe practice to protect the public safety. Thank you.
Marilyn Allen, the American Acupuncture Council. I'm interested, I am asking a question. When a person has been charged with fraud through an insurance audit, and they're paying a fine, are you notified of that, or is it something you don't know about?
So what's the actual action that the insurance company?
When an insurance company
is
performs an
informed?
audit on an acupuncturist within the state of California, when they are given an amount of money that they owe back, are you notified of that?
I don't believe so. The
No.
only way we would be notified is if there was a criminal
action.
Exactly. Is there any kind of action happening? Or is it just a communication between the insurance company and the
The
practitioner?
insurance company to the insured, and then they get a letter saying how much money they owe back.
Mm.
The reason I'm asking this is we are providing $30,000 worth of insurance, legal fees for these cases, and we're getting between 3 and 5 a week. The least amount that I have heard of is $211,000. And the reason I say we're getting them, Sam Collins, who teaches insurance, ethical insurance billing, is interacting with the insurance company part of the time with the attorney on behalf of the person who is being requested to send money back. And he got one of them, he talked to the insurance company, he justified what was being done and that the acupuncturist actually had spent the time that they said. And the insurance company wrote back and said, in the effort of good faith, we will not request that you pay the $211,000 back if you will make these changes in your documentation and in your billing. But we have people that owe $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 back. And I'm just asking, is that reported to you, which I guess it's insurance fraud. I don't have that legal opinion. But it is an issue because they're saying now that they're going to audit every acupuncturist in California. And they are tracking the people, they're monitoring them for 3 to 4 years before they actually come in and do an audit and request files out of the thing.
I don't think we have anything in place that requires the insurance companies to report to us. So unless they have it in their own business management processes to let us know, again, the only way we know about them is if there's a criminal action filed. So.
Or if there's a complaint. So if the insurance
Right, right.
company has a complaint of fraud, but if it's a purely civil matter between the insurance company and the acupuncturist or licensee, and they resolve that civil matter, and there is no criminal complaint or complaint to the board, then that's, would be resolved between the parties.
Any other public comment on the enforcement report? Thank you, Cricket.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item we would like to present for the enforcement report is the top 10 violations leading to enforcement actions. This is not an exhaustive list, and it's for informational purposes only, but we thought that with the associations asking for this kind of information, it would be helpful for us to put this out at this time. So we do list those categories that we just discussed, along with a slightly more broken down version of examples within that. Now, we don't have data in terms of numbers on these happening, but this is just to give you, members and the public, an idea of what kind of violations we're looking at. And I'll just go ahead and read the top 10 categories, and you guys can look at the description. So the number 1 was convictions and arrests. Number 2, unlawful practice of acupuncture. Again, Bradley, Mr. Chimino, you were asking in regards to what kind there, and that breaks it down. Failure to register an address change, unregistered practice location, display of license, negligence, incompetence, malpractice settlements, sexual misconduct, failure to follow infection control, discipline by a public agency, and failure to notify the board of false or assumed name. All 10?
No, it's in writing.
It's right in the packet.
It's in the packet.
I'm sorry?
Would you know what page it is on?
It would be the second item from the enforcement report. So, yeah.
It's item 8B.
Thank you. Item 8B on the agenda for the second day. So again, in terms of unregistered, you have failure to register a practice or more than one practice locations, failure to properly display the wall license, because this was asked by board members earlier, failure to register that you've moved, that you've opened up another one. Delinquent licenses, licensees often continue practicing after their license has been moved to delinquent status, and they're not up on that. It's one of the reasons we're looking to increase the late fee, because a $25 late fee for a $325 license is rather small, and what does it mean? You know, most other boards have actually recently set their late fee to be the cost of the license itself. $325 at our current fee structure, it's a bit more, they'll feel it. Licensees will feel that more. Now, again, this isn't for punishment. This is for people staying current with their license to protect the public. And a price hasn't been set, or a fee hasn't been set there, but we'll have more information on that after our fee study. And Francisco, in terms of negligence and incompetence, just to read that out, failure to remove needles, adverse reactions, burning, bruising, practicing beyond the scope of practice, needling through clothing, even, pneumothorax would go as to gross negligence, mostly. So, any questions from the board?
I think here on the number 2, unlawful practice of acupuncture, so that's probably answered earlier. We had a lot of question on it, so you already have this breakdown here, and that's helpful. So thank you.
We'll look at trying to get numbers for these for you. No questions from the board? Public comment?
Jack Marmarco, Empress College. So the unlicensed individual, those are unlicensed acupuncturists, correct? So the PTs and the chiros that are practicing, they are licensed in their own boards, but they are still violating, and therefore these are the unlicensed acupuncturists.
Are you looking at the 4th bullet for number 2?
Yeah, correct.
Unlicensed individual owning acupuncture business corporate. This is when the corporate structure isn't followed appropriately, correct? The 3rd bullet down. Dry needling, I see, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that I mean, the PTs are basically just invading that field, and we're the last stand here.
Right, that
We're
would
the
count
last
that.
stand in California nationwide, so they are just moving towards that, and, probably they're doing the violations right now, and they're actually teaching some of the major universities are teaching the dry needling in the state of California, but as a teaching institution. And this is very alarming. The other thing I wanted to say, that is some language, failure to sterilize instrument. So I did notice in some of your languages, you do have even things like autoclaves. Nobody has autoclaves anymore. All the needles are disposable. And the word sterilized, in terms of if they do the cupping or cleaning, the word sterilized could be sanitized. You have to make sure that you use the proper word. The sterilization should be autoclaved. So no acupuncturist has an autoclave in, or they might still have an antique autoclave, but not autoclaving anything. So I think the word sterilized could be a problem there. And of course, if they're not using disposable needles, that's malpractice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none? Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Thank you. So we're going to take a break and then come back. We'll be on the item 10, update on computer-based testing. So let's have a breakdown for, it's 11:11. How about in 10 minutes? 11:15. To order.
I would like to raise a point of order, Madam President. I want to reopen the legislative report for the Site Inspection Authority section. I misspoke. May I have the permission to do so?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Under the Site Inspection Authority, I had noted that we had complaint-driven Site Inspection Authority. The board actually has no Site Inspection Authority, so this would be very helpful for the board to be able to get this kind of access, especially in enforcement cases. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So let's move on to the item 10, update on computer-based testing for the California Acupuncture licensing exam. Jay Hurt, please.
Good morning, everybody, again. So I'm here to provide the board with an update on computer-based testing for the California Acupuncture licensing exam, known as the CALE. So on October 1st, 2018, the California Acupuncture Board went live with computer-based testing for the California Acupuncture licensing exam. The Office of, working with the Office of Professional Exam Services, we continue to develop, who continues to develop the CALE and assigned the board a project manager that liaisons the board with the testing company, Psychological Services, or known as PSI. So the board's been accepting applications for examination, and they're now processed on a continuous basis. All approved applications with the exam fee accepted are immediately submitted to PSI. They're updated through our system, so we can talk to PSI, and it allows applicants to promptly schedule their exam. Exam testing locations are available 6 days a week at 17 California location sites and additional out-of-state sites. Aside from a few computer issues that have been fixed, the overall feedback from test takers has been completing this computer-based testing with the CALE format has been positive. I also wanted to call out a little bit, there's the piece in my earlier part that I didn't mention, but our staff has had to work directly with our own Office of Information Services, and so it's really, this implementation has really been a four-part piece with the California Acupuncture Board, working with OPES, working with PSI, and working with OIS. And I just have to acknowledge the board staff. They've really been very proactive in watching and tracking every element of this. So there was a number of issues, but we were, just because of that attention, have headed off in the past, and they've really been diligent to address those things as timely as possible. I'd also urge, if people are having some issue with it, don't hesitate to call us and let us know, because sometimes that's the first way we can know. But as of this last couple of weeks, it's been very, very quiet. People have been taking their tests, so we haven't had to go back and forth with our program manager from OPES to work on things. It's been a wonderful relief to see it just working like it's supposed to be. So then on to our data here. Computer-based testing statistics. These are from 10/1/2018 to 3/16/2019. So in that period, we had a total test taker of 309. And actually, that's really somewhat of a year's worth because of the way that computer testing was implemented. We had to have a break period. So before we'd have, we would have done a test in August, and we would have done the whole group in one day, and we'd had results available. So due to the implementation, the next start date was moved to October, and then it took us a period of time to set that, some statistical period to get enough numbers in there to be able to report to the board. So that's sort of explaining why, the 309 test takers is actually slightly lower than we would have had for a regular test cycle. And we can talk about maybe what that represents later on in the report. So the overall pass rate for this period was 82%. The total number of test takers pass rate by language was, for English language, the pass rate was 78%. There was 175 total test takers, 136 passed, 39 failed. For Chinese, it was 93%, 83 total test takers with 77 passed, 6 failed. And in Korean, we had 80%, 51 total, 41 passed, 10 failed. And then if we look at the combined pass rate for first-time and repeat test takers with all languages as an aggregate, the first-time pass rate was 90%. There was 232 total, 208 passed, and the retaker rate was 59%, 78 total, 46 passed. So then, speaking about reporting the California Acupuncture License Exam pass rate by institution, the implementation of computer-based testing on October 1 will allow for 180-day California statistics reporting, and this will be available in mid to late October 2019. So basically, we're going to close out at the end of this, like, I think it's April 1st is Monday. And so at some point during the month, probably more near the end of the month, we'll be able to provide those statistics from the board. And then they'll be provided on an ongoing basis. So the first period that's going to be reported is through 10/1/2018 to 3/31/2019. The next period will be 4/1/2019 to 9/30/2019. And then we'll just keep going every day, every 100 days thereafter that. Now, we do have some ability to make these statistics on a more frequent basis. This is kind of consistent with what we've done before. We have identified that training programs are required for their accreditation and federal reporting for financial aid to be able to report their test score averages for 3-year periods. So it's necessary for us to report to our training programs at least once a year. But we'll have these available so we can create statistics more frequently if there's some need for it. And that's my report for computer-based testing. Any questions?
I'd like to point out that we are looking at ways to be able to present this information to you, but as was noted earlier with the enforcement, we are transitioning to a new system. So we'll be looking to program new types of reporting into our future system, and our ability to manipulate the current system is a little bit limited. So a little patience with us as we move to this new format.
So do we know how many of them is from outside the state, the test takers?
I'm sure we could pull that data out. I don't have it readily in front of me. But we could look into that information for sure. I mean, I think it's a simple query because the way it goes, we have an interface with the testing center, and our analysts can go online and do a number of different report functions. So.
And it's great we have different languages,
Right.
with the Chinese and the Korean language.
Right.
There's a pretty good number.
Yeah, exactly.
Test taker. And thank you.
I also just wanted to give a little bit more information. So for the last April test in 2018, we had 382 test takers, and that was for a 6-month period. And in August 2017, there were 429 test takers for that period. But in this period, for somewhat of a year period, we had 309 test takers. So we're way down on that. But we're thinking that one of the things that happened is there is the NCCM confusion that might be affecting the way people are doing things, or the fact is now that people can schedule whenever they want, they don't have to say, if I don't get on the bus now, I'm going to have to wait 6 months. They can put it off. So I think that from our pass rates, we've had the most eager and ready and well-qualified students taking their tests. And in terms of our kind of slightly higher rates than historic, we're thinking that that's what the reason is. We've talked to our OPES, we've looked at the data, we've talked to the test centers, and there's not a feeling of any kind of compromise or anything like that with that. I think that, but we'll continue to watch it. But I just wanted to get some insight on the drop in testing numbers right away. So.
I had a question. The ticker this year is a 59% pass rate. It looks like a little bit better than the last few years. Is that?
I don't know offhand, but the overall rates are a little bit better than we've seen before.
This time looks like it's a little bit better than the last time.
Right.
And we addressed these things a couple years ago. Looks like the school takes some action. And we mentioned about the school to help this taker to concentrate on the area they fail in. Looks like if the percentage go up a little bit, so the school probably doing some a little bit good job, or the people the taker probably have to think about seriously to take the exam, because I hope this percentage go up every year.
Well, I appreciate that perspective. It hadn't gone through my mind that it was better education that was
Yeah,
causing
because
the
I remember
grades.
the few years ago, only 50%, no, or less. And this time, close to 60% is pretty good. At least they had some improvement.
Right. Yeah.
So do we still have the talk about the requirement for the retaker? How many times they have to taking and stop and then retaking again, or we still continue to let them to take every exam?
I think
every
that that
year?
would be, I mean, from staff's opinion, that would be very valid thing to look into. What we can see for sure is that after they've failed 3 times, they don't do better after that. So, and then, you know, for example, NCCOM, I think they have a 5-year period that, you know, or 5-time taking, you know, rate. And, you know, to me, there's 2 possibilities. If you're letting these retakers, it kind of compromises your exam that they can keep coming in. And then the other part, if somebody's really, you know, and I've talked to a number of these licensees, they're getting close, so they just don't get through it, and they do it over and over. And sometimes they'll even just like by 1 point, next time by 4 points, next time by 8 points, right? So they need some additional training. So it may be something like, you know, you get 3 cycles, and I mean, people can think about what the solutions are. There's ways to deal with that. But I think it's a good thing to us to discuss. I think it would help overall. I think it would be a benefit of students, actually, and remove that, like, you know, kind of professional test taker who tries to fail. You know, I mean, you can look at the rates, and it's like they're just pushing the button and looking at the, you know, they're not trying to answer them. So, yeah, so I think that's a great observation, Kidman.
Good, thank you.
Is there any way, if anyone was outside apply for a license, then can they take exam on the computer in their state?
Yes, there's, we didn't list the number there, but we know that there's 22 states. We have the 22 site locations out of state, so we are getting a number of them, and they can just schedule it. I mean, they have to qualify the same way everybody else qualifies, but the basic thing is they can take their tests maybe closer to home, like in New York or in Florida or in Texas or, you know, something like that. And the other thing, just the availability is Monday through Saturday. So the test is very available, right? So people are really feeling like, well, I can do this when I want to. They come and they figure that out. There's also an ability where you can, you know, schedule in a window, and if you can't make it, you can just keep rescheduling so you can put it off, right? So before we really had to, once you're in there, you show up. If not, then tough luck, right? You know, so there's a much better ability for students to plan when they're ready. And that might even be affecting why the rates are there. They kind of have another month, or they got together with their cohort, or, you know, I mean, we just have our numbers, right? So.
Thank you.
Public comment?
My name is Neil Miller, and I'm representing myself in my comments. I would like to think that Kidman's comments are correct, that the schools are doing such a wonderful job and the rates are coming up. But I don't think so. The last time there was such an outrageous jump in the numbers was in 1986, 1987, when there was fraud, and someone was convicted for fraud and went to federal prison. There is rumors around through the profession and I'm not going to single out any group, so I'll say the purple, the green, and the red group. And there are rumors within some of those groups that people are using modern technology to compromise the exam. And so I would think with Kidman's comments, the schools would be pounding their chest and saying, we're doing a better job. I don't know if any of you were looking in the audience, but the schools that are being represented here were shaking their head like, oh my God, these numbers are askew. So I, as just an observer who talks to students and talks to people, if I had any solid evidence, I would certainly present it to you. But I think that we need to be aware of this jump in the numbers, and that there are a lot of rumors spreading around through different groups that there is, you know, you can have a camera on your pen, you can have a camera in your eyeglasses, And there's rumors within certain communities that the test is being compromised, and people are taking photographs of the test and memorizing the test and actually selling that. And I'm asking more and more people to find some link to that. The last time I heard that there was some improprieties, I talked to someone at the LA Times. They opened up an investigation and eventually found out that fraud was going on. I'm not saying that it is, but the numbers are askew, and I am concerned because the last time there was such a difference in numbers was not because the school, I think the schools do a fine job, and you would expect them to be beating their chest as opposed to shaking their head today. So, and I don't think that I'm alone in my comments. It's just there's an elephant in the room, and I have no problem pointing it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacques Mormarco, I'm representing myself and, of course, Empress College. So thank you, Mr. Kidman. I think you just proven yourself to be able to assess statistics and number. You have that memory, and you definitely saw the change for the repeat test takers. However, I think we're going to have to wait till next month when we see the stats by schools. We have an English program. We usually score quite well on our students, 90 or 100%, and it has been like that for a few years. However, we're going to see the schools, the ones that have different programs that are not English programs. You see the stats. The English stats did not change. Some other stats from other languages happen to have changed, and we'll have to see the schools and their program and see what has happened to those stats with the different languages. Is the test in a different language because it's computer administered? Would it be different? Is there some other ways that they're seeing the numbers, or is it the same exact test? I'm not sure on that. And we'll have to see. However, I think this is some alarming statistics. And possibly, on the positive note, you know, they are more prepared. We have 50% less students taking the exam. Is that also a change that has occurred? And, you know, the ones that are taking it somehow have the ability to do so well. But we'll have to examine this, and there are some serious concerns. So thank you for moving to that test. However, you know, there are compromises with technology nowadays, and I think those have to be really looked at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rona Ma. I'm the president of CalEdma, but on this issue, I only represent myself. From the student or some new licensee, I got a very good response, you know, because they don't need to travel from Sacramento to Los Angeles, from Los Angeles to Sacramento. And they are very appreciated that the board finally moved this from the paper exam to the computer-based. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
So I could just say in closing that we have inquired with OPS. We're tracking this issue in terms of exam security, and based on our initial inquiries, those have not been, we're comfortable where we're at right now, but we're going to continue to track and address this concern.
Ron Seidman from Five Branches University. From our point of view, we probably have two situations. One is, of course, the educational programs and the students are focusing more and more to do well in this field. And the other part is, of course, security. And in our own cumulative exams, for a while, not presently, but for a while, we would make all new questions for each exam in order to guarantee that fraud couldn't happen. That's expensive, but I just wanted to share that idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none? Okay, let's move.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay. Let's move to item 11, updates from acupuncture professions.
Neil Miller from CalAtma. Well, I'm honored and pleased to be representing our association this year. We are a new association. We are an open, democratic, transparent, inclusive association. We started last year. There were 26 different associations, and we had Assemblyman Lowe had a number of stakeholders meetings, and they formed a steering committee, and our steering committee is now a 501c6 nonprofit professional association, and we really look forward to working with the board. Several of our members are here today that I wanted to acknowledge. Our Academic and Education Committee Chair, Young Ping. Tom is in charge of political PAC, and Dr. Ma is our chair. I didn't forget anybody, right? Dr. Ma is our chair. As I've mentioned over the last 2 days, we really want to work with the board in partnership. In the past, the board doesn't do legislation, and when we go to do legislation, the legislators are often, the first question is, how does the acupuncture board feel about this particular issue? So we know that you're not really discussing scope of practice. However, we need to have a vehicle to discuss scope of practice. So we would like to have on the agenda issues related to scope of practice so that we can have honest discussion. We talked about lasers with the board in the past. Those same lasers are now available over the counter. Anybody could buy them. There are a number of acupuncturists who are unaware that it's not in our scope of practice specifically spelled out. It's an innocent mistake because you can go and buy one. Our public members could go buy a laser machine. Lasers are in a number of states throughout the country, and we would like to stay up to speed with that. So we would ask that the discussion of lasers and other techniques that we think should be in our scope of practice could be discussed. And if we were in agreement that this is an issue, then our association could work with the board to discuss such changes with the legislature. We would like to, I've been talking since Governor Schwarzenegger left about the Consumer Guide to Acupuncture. It has not been reproduced through Jerry Brown's entire tenure, and this is a very important accessible thing for the consumer to know what it is that we do, what our scope of practice is, what to do if there's a complaint, if there's unprofessional conduct, if any of those things. It's pretty well spelled out. So I'm sure that you still have a couple copies. If you don't, I still have a few, but I would like to have that on the agenda, and we would like to work with the board to address that issue and see if there are any changes in technology and other issues. I mentioned our scope of practice, so I talked about lasers. I'd also like to bring up injection therapy and have that on the agenda. Injection therapy is now in Florida, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. California has been one of the leading states over the years, and we're now falling behind with some of the new technology that's out there. Our association has not taken a position on these issues, but we would like to have the vehicle with which to discuss that and bring it to the legislature, because if there are changes that are with new technology and new things, we want to bring that up. One of our goals is to advance to an entry-level doctoral program. In order, we want to look at and work in partnership with the board and the schools, because right now there are certificates being granted from a lot of schools, and there's no oversight from the CAB, and it's very confusing to the consumer. Who went to what school? Did you take a course online for 2 semesters for $10,000 and get a doctorate, or did you go to a more sophisticated program? So we need to have this discussion, and amongst ourselves it's more difficult getting together with all the different associations or the schools, but it seems logical that the acupuncture board would be a place for those discussions. We haven't really addressed the issue since the time of the Little Hoover Commission, and at that time there were no doctoral programs. And all of the schools that opposed increasing our hours to 3,000 hours now have doctoral programs. So we'd like to be really transparent in discussing the issues, and we believe that it's in the best interest of the consumer and the profession to bring our skills up. That's why there are these doctoral programs. There's a need for it. So it's not within your purview to go and create that legislation, but it is to have those discussions, and we would like to have those discussions and go forward. Lastly, this is an issue that's very close to my heart, and I've had, did you pass those out? Okay. So you have in front of you, the question is, what is Asian massage? So I'm here before the Acupuncture Board, the regulatory agency, and I'm asking, this is in our scope of practice, what is Asian massage? Nobody can tell me. This first came to our attention when it was called Oriental massage 18 years ago. So in 2001, we brought it to the board's attention that it first came to our attention that insurance companies were denying reimbursement to consumers because the words Oriental massage was in statute and there was no reference to modern terminology, manual therapy. So we discussed this with the board, and the board wrote a letter. So the first thing you're looking at is a letter from the Acupuncture Board stating that myofascial release, which is now called manual therapy, is within our scope of practice. Several years later, more and more insurance companies were letting this known, but they were sending letters to patients saying that the acupuncturist was practicing beyond our scope of practice. So this became an issue again, and again you have a copy of a letter from the Acupuncture Board discussing manual therapy. So we went the next step and we brought it to the Acupuncture Board many times, and they said there's nothing we can do, so we brought forth legislation to include the words manual therapy as a definition of what is this thing called Asian massage. If you Google Asian massage, and I've asked the board, to each member to do that, all that comes up are pictures of naked women and things that are scandalous and things that we want to eliminate in our profession and associated with our profession. So we introduced legislation, and I have a copy of the floor alert that talks about this. But I'd like to point out on the first thing that the Little Hoover Commission in 2004 stated that we need to have clarity in statute, any language that may be ambiguous, and it is in the best interest of the consumer and services to improve the communication between the licensed acupuncturist and other healthcare providers using commonly acceptable medical terminology. So if you talk to any other healthcare professional and you say, we do Asian massage, they look at you like you're nuts. And so we say we're doing manual therapy. And so we don't want to continue to get letters from the Acupuncture Board to the different insurance companies to discuss this. I have a copy of the language that was put forth. It discusses what manual therapy is, pressure techniques including myofascial release, manual therapy, soft tissue through massage, mobilization of the skin muscles for therapeutic objective of stimulation of proper body. That is what we do. Traditionally it was called Tui Na. And I'll wrap up in just a second, Madam Chair. But that's what it is that we do. And we think that it's incumbent upon the board to be able to tell us what it is that's in statute. And I've been asking for 18 years for a definition. It makes common sense that we would do this. This legislation, here's a copy of the first time that it was introduced. It was introduced several times. And when Senator Cedillo introduced the bill, it made it all the way to the governor's desk and was vetoed. The physical therapist wrote 500 letters within a week's period and said that manual therapy is within their scope and not ours. We now are a little bit better organized, and we hope that we've been able to flush out this issue. So after 18 years, I'm asking again to get some guidance from the Acupuncture Board on what is Asian massage. And it would be prudent upon us to use medical terminology that is acceptable within the field of medicine. And so we are asking to use the word manual therapy, which is there is a particular code for that. There is no code for Asian massage, so consumers should not be reimbursed. And lastly, next year there will be a new CPT code. CPT, for those of you who don't know, is current procedural terminology. What is it that we call things? And there is a technique called dry needling that has made its way throughout the country. And so the AMA has put forth new language that will be coming out in 2020 for TPT, trigger point therapy, and then in parentheses it says dry needling. Well, the board believes that this is acupuncture. We believe it's acupuncture. We would like to address putting those words, TPT, in parentheses, dry needling, in statute. And that would put a very clear message to the athletic trainers that are taking abbreviated weekend courses in dry needling and going out there. So if you can imagine, in 15 hours taking a course and going out there and needling people, and you have no oversight over this. So this is a way to be on the proactive side of preventing pneumothorax and other serious injuries and setting in motion the policies that the Acupuncture Board have taken on, be it that dry needling is acupuncture. And so we would like to have that codified in statute and are requesting to have such a discussion on a future agenda and to invite the Business and Professions Committee to come and hear the discussions that we're having so that they could see that our associations are working with the Acupuncture Board, moving things forward in a better effort to protect the consumers.
Thank you.
And there are copies of the handout that I did give to the board. I have several copies for those in the audience. And the schools that are here today also were in support of that language. Both Five Branches and Emperor's College were in support of those bills, and I'm certain that they're still in support of this idea.
Still good morning, right? Yeah, my name is Rona Ma. I'm the president of Keoatama. Right now, I represent, as the president, I represent the association. Keoatama is the pretty new, that is the first unified, because the new meter introduced, I just want to add a little on. Keoatama is the first unified association in California. After 40 years, acupuncture has been legalized. We are pretty new, okay? But as the president first, I want to thank you to all the board members, the EO, and the legal counsel, and plus all the staffs for your hard work. We know, we have 11 members in our board, but 4 of our members and plus of some members is showing up to these meetings to support the board. We know safety is our safety of our patient is our top priority. Okay, it always has been, and it always must be. So Keoatama would like working with the board very closely for the standard of practice and for the safety of the consumer of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Oh, updates. Updates.
My name is Yongping Chen. I represent Keoatama Education Committee as a chair. So I will suggest we discuss a lot about about education and about continuing education. I want to clarify. Yesterday, I clarified the on distance and on site. So 25 hour of the on site education. So I will suggest the next time put it in agenda about to clarify the 25-hour on-site is like face-to-face in the same meeting room, or can also do like a webinar, live webinar. So 25-hour on-site is that has to take in-person, face-to-face, hands-on, or just a webinar. So as an association, we strongly suggest that 25-hour has to be on-site, in-person, face-to-face, hands-on, especially for all the hands-on courses. And as I know, physical therapist, chiropractor, optometrist, they all have half and half on-site, distance or on-site. So in person, they have a requirement to be in person because acupuncture is hands-on profession practice. So you cannot learn everything on webinar. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to make a clarification here. You fine, you're fine, you're done. This is an update from the profession, just for the time and respect. If you come from the same association, please just, be respect to the other one's association. And also there is an item for the future agenda items. So if you have certain, requests, that we can wait for that agenda item. So I appreciate it, and please, if other different association, you want to come to give us update, thank you. No? Okay, thank you. So now we come to agenda item 17, election of the board officers. Would you want to take the thing?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam President. So it is that time of year to conduct election of officers. The Acupuncture Board has the positions of president and vice president. What I will do to conduct this is I will call out for each position nominations from the board, and then we will inquire with the person nominated if they accept that nomination. We will get all the nominations for that position and then hold a roll call vote. And then we'll do the same for the vice president position. Is that okay? Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay. I would like to call for nominations for the president position.
I would like to nominate Dr. Mataki to be president of the board again.
I'll second.
Is that? Dr. Mateki, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other nominations on the table? Okay. Do we need to vote if there's only one nomination?
Yes.
Yes, okay. We'll go ahead and do the roll call vote. We don't have to do public comment for this, correct?
You may want to take.
Just to be clear. Public comment?
So the current motion, I think, the motion on the floor is to elect Dr. Mateki as board president?
Correct.
Thank you. The current motion is to elect Dr. Mateki as president. Any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry, it was seconded by Mr. Harabidian. No public comment. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mateki, or can she vote for herself?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Mateki.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Chimino,
Yes.
Harabedian,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Rosario?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0 for the nomination of Dr. Mateki for president.
Thank you. Support.
Thank you, Board. We'll now move to the vice president position. Do we have any nominations for vice president?
Can I ask a question before?
Certainly.
Kipman, do you want to be vice president again?
Yeah, I'm happy to honor to become this position.
I'd like to nominate Kidman also again for vice president.
So nominated Kipman?
Yes.
Do we have any other nominations? Seeing none, the motion on the table is for Kipman Chan to be vice president. We have a second. Is there any public comment?
Who's this?
I was going to say, did anyone second yet?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was.
Second. I'll second.
Well, so there's a nomination for Kipman. Is there any discussion by the board?
I think
Okay,
so.
no other nominations?
No other
Okay.
nominations?
Is there a motion on the floor?
I move the board
Move to elect
to
Kipman Chan
elect
as vice
Kidman Chan as
president?
vice president.
Okay, is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay. So Francisco Kim motions to have Kipman Chan be vice president for the board. Bradley Chimino seconds.
Public comment?
Public comment. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Mutaiki?
Yes.
Chan?
Yes.
Chimino?
Yes.
Harabedian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Osorio?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 to elect Kim and Chan for vice president.
Congratulations, Kim.
Thank you.
All right. That's it for that agenda item.
So now let's move to, thank you, Ben. Thank you, board members, council. So let's move to agenda number 18, future agenda items not on the list. So let's start with the board member, please. What would you like to see on the future agenda items?
There's no tab, right? It's just any items you want to discuss, you can bring now.
The continuing education law and ethics, that's already, I think I've already mentioned that, so that would be.
That would be on
Okay.
called for the next. Technically, the Administrative Procedures Manuals allows the board president 2 meetings before an item is to be called on the agenda, but again, it's all up to the board president. It can happen sooner. So we do have the continuing education. Any others from the board members? We were also looking at different enforcement reporting tools and clarifications. Okay, shall we open it up to the public?
Well, I have a question, really. There was that initial discussion during today's agenda item 4 regarding the report from the Education Committee and that request that it be on a future agenda item, but does that involve a further delegation to the Education Committee to research the outstanding questions? I think the outstanding question was clarification on the definition of law and ethics or how the regulation can be done to provide additional clarification. And I think there was a request by board members to work with stakeholders on that. So my question is there a further delegation to the Education Committee to continue to research that and bring it back to the next board meeting? And also, is there any kind of request for a stakeholder meeting in the interim between board meetings or anything to research that question? So.
Chair Harabedian, if I recall correctly, you had recommended it go to the full board. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I think in the meantime, to the council's comment, the Education Committee, along with Mr. Hurt and other staff, we can work on researching these issues and trying to do some of that legwork before the next full board meeting, which, I'm happy to do. Because I do think that whether it's staff doing it or the Education Committee, we're going to have to try to iron some of that stuff out. In terms of getting stakeholders involved, I would like to see that. I don't think that's a bad idea. So I don't know how formal the direction needs to be. I'll sort of defer to staff to iron, I think, the details out. But as the Education Committee stands, I think we're happy to do whatever needs to be done. So.
We could approach this in a couple ways. In terms of the stakeholder meeting, that does take some time to put on. We contract with our Strategic Organizational Leadership and Individual Development Office to be our facilitators for stakeholder meetings, and that allows people to come here and submit in person or documentation in writing on the matter at hand, or we can just defer it back to the committee and right now declare to everybody here, send in any information you have on classifying ethics and jurisprudence and laws.
Yeah, I would probably prefer that.
Okay. So as an announcement, everybody send in any information you have on the ethics and jurisprudence requirements, specifications you're requiring, and the committee will review that in the interim and so then the committee will bring this information up in the committee meeting, or do you want it to full board?
Well, I think the way that we had left it was that there needed to be more research done on what do we mean by law and ethics, and we had sent the language to the full board. But I think in the interim, we as a committee can do some of that work, right?
Certainly.
Figuring out what we mean by law and ethics. So.
Right.
Okay.
That's,
So one way to do it, I might recommend, is to open up Agenda Item 4 for the board to motion authorizing the Education Committee to continue to research Item 10, amending those two sections, and work with staff, and then bring it back to the next board meeting. I think was the
Yeah,
question.
I would, yes. I think that's
10 would be
right.
fall into the examination committee. Right. So you mean item 10?
So my
From day one.
So we have today's agenda, item 4, was the
Oh, yes.
report from the
Yes.
Education Committee
Right.
and possible action on any recommendations.
Yes.
So I think the
Yeah.
action that the board is wanting to take is to authorize the Education Committee to perform this research and bring it back, and work with staff, and then bring it back to the next meeting. So my recommendation is to open 4, so that can be a formal motion.
Yeah, I would,
Yes.
so moved. Is there a second?
I second.
I don't, are we actually on item 4 now, or does the president have to open it up?
Yeah, let's open up agenda item 4. So
Motion.
motion from Chair of the Education Committee.
Yeah, has been made.
It was Ruben.
Okay.
Motion to continue discussing this matter at the next Education Committee meeting and bring this information to the full board.
No, We
Okay.
authorize the Chair of the Education Committee to continue work with the member.
Recommended motion might be that the board authorizes the Education Committee to meet and work with staff
Yes.
on discussion to amend Title 16 CCR Sections 1399.43 and 1399.489, and report to the to the board at the next board meeting
Yes.
Yeah,
on any recommendations.
Yes.
so moved.
Good. And you second?
I second, yes.
Yes.
Public comment? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Dr. Matecki?
Yes.
Chan?
Yes.
Yes.
Harabedian?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Osorio?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Any more items from the board members?
So we're back to agenda item 18.
Yes.
Sorry.
So now let's open to the public for future agenda items not on the list. Please limit your comment to 2 minutes. Thank you.
I will note that we have heard that the public would like entry-level doctorate discussed, guide consumer brochures, new technologies, manual therapy, CPT codes. Anything else?
I have nothing to say.
Thank you.
Write it down.
Thank you.
Minutes.
It's in the minutes. So-
We can't hear you.
Yeah, we don't know what you're saying.
I already mentioned about the hand-on, 24/5-hour hand-on CE. I didn't hear mentioned, so I just want to clarify. And maybe put this in consideration, but what's as an acupuncturist, their continuing education content should be like certain item, or the one for risk management, I would suggest to put it as mandatory or required. I talked to Mary Ellen, really a lot of, I don't want to talk detail, I just mention the risk management is directly will affect the consumer's safety. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other from the public? No? Okay. So the board will move to the closed sessions for executive officer evaluations.
That is agenda item 12 for the first day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
weigh in and say that we think he's doing a great job?
Noted.
Thank you already,
represent all your association.
Thank you for the support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm lucky to be working with a great team. Thank you.
So I don't think there are any other agenda items other than the closed session. So after the closed session, the board will reconvene to adjourn,
Yes.
and that will not be webcast?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all.